Good evening and welcome. Good morning, good night, wherever you are. I'm Abs of October Red, and I am joined by no other than Eddie Hearn. Thank you so much for coming on this live. Something you didn't have to do, but you do it.
No problem. All part of the job.
But speaking of jobs, you've been extremely busy. I know that we're limited on time, but I want to do some housekeeping first, Eddie. I've got to say a massive thank you for shouting me out on the stomping ground.
No problem.
I had several messages, several DMs, screenshots, all sorts, just saying how much you've supported my channel. So for that, I thank you. You're one of the guys that always turns up, never lets me down, here before I am sometimes. So thank you so much. I mean that. And that is why you are my favorite promoter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, it's, I don't say those things because I need to or because, I need to like get any favors. It's just that I think you do a good job. I think your questions are different to, I reckon I've done 12 interviews so far today.
Oh, have you?
Pretty much every one of them has been the same. And I think that when you've got all those YouTube channels, you've got all those platforms, how many can you watch where you're just watching the same thing every time? So you've got to be a little bit different. And, I like your questions and always happy to give you my time.
Listen, it works both ways. And like I said, I do have bias, and I'm not ashamed to admit that you are my favorite promoter. I've been let down by a lot of people in the industry from when I've started, and you definitely aren't one of them. So yeah, it works both ways, but I know I'm short on time. So thank you to everyone that's watching. This is last minute, so I'm expecting people to load up as we go through. Eddie, I've got to ask you first and foremost, the PBC collaboration. I nearly fell off my chair when I woke up and I got up to you and Leonard Ellaby practically arm in arm. And yeah, that was just phenomenal. Talk to me about that collaborative working.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've seen through kind of Riyadh season and everything that Turki Al Sheikh's doing. He's kind of broke down a few of those barriers. We're the lead promoter in the Riyadh season card in Los Angeles. Obviously, it was still a Riyadh season event, but we worked quite closely with PBC there, and it just helps to kind of grease the wheels of getting that in motion. When we signed Edgar Berlanga, I said to him, I'm going to get you 2 headline events, and then we're going to fight Canelo. And then when Canelo signed with PBC, I was like, oh no, like, how are we going to do it? And we managed to do it. And I think because that relationship's evolved a little bit, we were able to do that deal. Obviously, with the Leonard Ellaby stuff, there hasn't been anything really too negative said in probably the last 6 months to a year. I think the last thing that was aggressive that was said was him going to stomp me out when he sees me or chin me on sight and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. I don't know. Like, I think that one of my, not skills, but when I see people, it's the way that it's kind of like the energy that you give them straight away. So I was standing there doing an interview, and Leonard came up to me, I think jokingly, and kind of put his fingers in my back like this, like it was a shooter, And I was actually just doing an interview, so I didn't even take any notice because I thought it was one of Edgar's lot mucking around. So I just didn't flinch or do anything. And then he kind of kept it there for about 10 seconds. And then when I finished, I turned around and it was Leonard. And I just went, Leonard. And he went, hey. And it was like, just from there, it's very different to, obviously, if I turn around at that point and go, what the fuck are you doing? Get your hands off me.
You're setting the tone.
That's not really my style. And, for all the beef that we've had over the years, I've never once listened to one of his interviews or saw one of his quotes and just thought, fuck, like, oh, I want to knock that guy out. They don't really register with me. I'm sure he's quite a nice bloke. I don't know, but it's just a game. And, when I see these people, it doesn't matter whether it's him, doesn't matter whether it's Espinoza or Aaron or Frank before we started working together, I would always be cordial. I'd always go, hey, how you doing? Now, as I said in the interview, I said to my dad, I can't remember how long ago, 6 months ago, I said, like, if I was around when you were promoting,
yeah, and
I was doing these videos or interviews and talking about like how would you have felt towards me? And he was like, he goes, I would want to smash you straight on the chin. Do you know what I mean? And I would as well if it wasn't me, because that's just my style. Like, I don't mean to be arrogant or brash, but I'm coming to try and just be different, ruffle some feathers, talk it up, get people talking. I think we've done a good job of that. So, but when it comes down to the personal side, I don't have, Oscar, all these guys. I don't really, it doesn't raise any blood pressure with me. All these arguments over the years and that kind of stuff. It's just, back you go with your response, and you have a little bit of banter. Obviously, sometimes the sarcasm gets lost a little bit with
British humour.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good to chat to him. Like, and I think a lot of people, when we have that chat, sort of go, "Oh, he's all right," actually, because I think the narrative that's spun, especially to some US fighters by these guys, "Oh, Eddie's a snake. You don't want to deal with him." "Oh, yeah," and then they kind of deal with me, and they go, "Well, he's all right. He's done a great job with us, and he's been spot on and 100% on everything he's ever promised us."
Mm.
You don't really find fighters saying bad words about me or us, in terms of what we've promised them, how we've paid them, when that payment's come straight after a fight. Like, we're 100% down the line. Now, you might get someone who says, "Oh, I didn't feel like I was a priority there," or that's okay, because sometimes you're not. That's the reality of life. But we've always been 100% on everything that we've done, and we've always been straight up. And the stuff with everybody else, never personal. It's just the game.
Just the game. I've got to, as I always do, Eddie, I've got to shout out to the chat. There's a few people that have rocked up in here. So good evening to Cola Bello. Good, big up to October Red and Eddie. Chris has said, Chris, one of the regular subscribers as well, to be fair, these all are. Does Eddie Hearn ever have a break? He's everywhere, the legend. It's one for you.
Yeah, I think that as you get a little bit older, like, it affects you differently. Like, I've made a bit of a conscious effort over the years to try and be a bit healthier and live a bit better. But it does, like, these last couple of weeks, we had, obviously, in August, we had Riyadh season in Los Angeles. That was a lot of hard work. And then we came back, and then I went back to LA for Pacheco, like 10 days ago, whatever it was, and then came back for a week to the UK, and then back now to Vegas.
Yeah.
We've also got a show in Mexico on Friday night.
Yeah.
And then we're back for Canelo, and then it's Wembley next week, which is going to be brutal in terms of the schedule. So, I think that, but at the same time, people talk about stress and, is it stress? Yeah, I guess it's stress. I think stress is relatable to the individual. Do you know what I mean? But when you look at stress in some people's lives, is it really stress? I mean, do I work hard? Yeah, I work really hard. Like, do I get tired? Yeah, knackered. But compare my stress to someone else's stress around the world in a war zone.
Yeah, for real.
Put food on the table. It's always relatable.
Got one of our subscribers, James, has said, "Are you going to make Cordina Barrett?" This is a massive question that's been fumbling around on X all afternoon since obviously we saw Shakur Stevenson with the injury as a late step in.
No, I don't think there'll be a fight for Joe on that card, because I think that His Excellency had his opinion of a big fight for that card. So we'll see what's to come. But Joe will be up at lightweight. I think we actually offered Zelfa Barrett the fight with Shakur Stevenson and Lee Wood, actually. But the fight that I want to make is actually Lee Wood against Zelfa Barrett. Lee is looking for a fight at 130 pounds. Obviously, he'd like to face one of the champions. Zelfa Barrett, coming off a good win against Jordan Gill, he's looking for a shot at the world title. I quite like that fight. So we'll have to see if that's possible. But we'll also, in turn, look for a big fight for Joe. Because, to be fair, he was the one that put his hand up for Shakur Stevenson and said, "I'm up for it."
Fair enough. And those are stuff that we might not know what's going on. Just finishing on Shakur, did you get to speak to Leonard Ellaby afterwards, or have you spoken to him afterwards about potentially Gervonta Davis and Shakur? Because that's a fight that we all really want.
During, like, as soon as I started talking to him, all the media just flew over.
I bet.
I said to him, like, without disrespect, like being disrespectful, tell me the big fights for Tank, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't forget, Tank is not a 140 pounder. He doesn't really want to be up there, and he doesn't really want to be fighting those big guys at 140 because it'll be a big disadvantage for him. So Tio, Ryan Garcia, Devin, they're all guys that are 140 and above, you know. And for me, when you look at the big fights at 135, the only big fight out there for Gervonta is Shakur Stevenson. And if Shakur comes back and beats Zepeda, then that's a massive fight, Tank against Shakur. So he was a little bit like, yeah, Shakur can't beat Tank. I said, well, I think he can. But tell me someone else that can be as competitive as Shakur Stevenson. Like, it doesn't exist. So sometimes those guys, like, they're not arrogant about Tank, but they kind of like put him on this level. But Tank does.
And the stonewall you around him as well. The stonewall you away from him.
Yeah, but Tank does do good numbers. He's a big draw, but he still needs a dance partner. And I like Shakur in that fight. I think Tank's brilliant, but you know, I do think that in terms of matchups for boxing, two young American superstars, I think it's a brilliant fight.
Yeah. Right, let's have a look. Here's an interesting one. Maka says,
"Can all the comments up here as well?"
You what? Sorry.
Got all the comments up here as well.
Oh, nice one. Have a pick. Pick which one you want to have a look at, Eddie.
Eddie's got a new Barnet. Yeah, I know. I had a short one. Look at the greys coming through there as well. Terrible.
We like greys.
I don't know.
Shows wisdom. Don't get using just for men. I don't want that dripping down your face in the heat. Don't do that.
Do you know that thing that caused me murders? That did. I mean, firstly, anything that you read on Twitter, I'll just say like 50% of the time it's complete bollocks. Anyway, I just read one earlier saying apparently Matchroom are giving Boots his contract back.
Yeah, I saw you comment on that and said don't believe it. Anything that they say.
He does all the parody images, puts me on the live feed with hair dye running down my face, yeah. And it's like, I've got to be honest, it was so good, yeah, that when I saw it, I was like, what the fuck is that? You know, and then I went to his page and it was like parody pictures or whatever it was. You don't know how viral that went. Like I
do because I saw it.
Honestly, even my friends were going to me, mate, have you got hair dye in? I'm like, no. And then I was saying to people, like, you do realise that if that was actually on the feed, there would be a video of it rather than just
100%.
And then I started thinking to myself, oh, it's not actually true. And the amount of DMs I got from people like, Eddie, try this product. It doesn't.
Are you joking?
I'm like, oh no, I don't have hair dye. So yeah, that was an interesting one.
Have a look through the comments, Eddie.
Any updates on Paro? You know, this is quite an interesting one, Liam Paro. I've got to be honest, like, I'm surprised there's not more of the bigger names wanting to call out Liam Paro. Like, obviously, he has a piece of that 140-pound title. He's very good, Liam Paro. You know, he went to Puerto Rico. He beat Subriel Matias, and we're looking for a defence for him in November, December. Originally, we wanted him to fight Kambosos in Australia. I thought it'd be a big Australian fight, but looking to secure his date in the next week, really. What fighter that's retired would Eddie have loved to promote? I mean, probably like Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali. Sugar Ray Leonard was probably one of my heroes as well. One of my favourite fighters, probably not a lot of people watching this would know about, is a guy called Meldrick Taylor, who got stopped in the last round against Chavez after winning. He was winning the fight comfortably. Yeah, I loved his style of fighting. You know, he was a great fighter. And actually, when I was watching some Nigel Benn stuff the other night as well, particularly like the Iron Barkley fight, he was one of a kind, Nigel Benn. He really was. Ammo Williams and Ray Ford. So Ray Ford will be back in November on a really big show we're planning in Philadelphia. And Ammo Williams looking to, you know, the thing is with Ammo is he's never really had the right kind of preparation or training camp. You know, when he boxed Hamza Shiraz, his camp was like 4 or 5 weeks long. And it's not that he's not dedicated, but he just hasn't got the setup right. And I said to him, you've got to find that setup. He's going to go into a fight in November, December. And just in an easy 10-rounder, just to get the camp right. Because I feel like if he had a real camp against Hamza, it would have been, it was a competitive fight, but I think he could have beaten him. And you know, he's a great guy. And yeah, just Pat McCormack needs to get more active. I agree.
What's happening with him then?
That's a great card, October 26th in Manchester.
Yeah,
People
okay.
are talking about British boxing right now, and you know the cards. You've got
Yep.
Rick Prograis against Jack Catterall, which is a great fight. You've got Michael Gomez Jr. against Reece Benavidez, British and Commonwealth title. You've got Ellie Stotney against Motu, which is another unification matchup for her. You've got Pat McCormack against Herrera. You know, great to see him back. You've got Campbell Hatton against Flint rematch.
Oh, the rematch, yeah.
Manchester, plus a load of talent. That's a great card in Manchester. So yeah, Pat McCormack is such a talent, and that hopefully October 26th will be the kickstart for him to really kick on. Who do you have on the Monaco card? We're just going through that at the moment. December 14th in Monaco. 2 World Championship fights will be on that card. Will Johnny be fit to go to Australia? Yeah, that is the plan for Johnny Fisher to fight in Australia. But obviously, he's having that little rest on his bicep. And then we'll go to there. By the way, the Mexican cards are my favourite, always fun. James, I agree. These Mexican cards are almost like little cult cards for hardcore UK.
Hardcores.
On the zone in America and in Mexico, they do massive numbers because there's a very strong Hispanic subscriber base on the zone. But Friday night is a really good card, like particularly Hernandez against Matisse. It's a 50-50 fight. So
yeah, I'll be watching that.
Lewis Crocker trying to make the Paddy Donovan fight. I think that's the best fight for both of those guys. What's happening with Agyarko? Was it the fact he didn't perform as well in the Troy? No, look, we like Kevin. You know, I think that we want him to be in these big fights, and sometimes people have got other ideas, but he's a very good fighter. We were trying desperately, actually, to make the Ishmael Davis Kevin Agyarko fight, but again, we couldn't get that made.
I'm going to have to pull back. I'm going to have to pull back on these because I know that you've got to go, Eddie. One of the things I did want to ask you, have you had any regrets of any fighters that you've not got anymore? Like either contracts have expired, you've parted ways. I know somebody said if you could have signed somebody, who would it have been? Have you ever had a fighter that you thought, you know what, I kind of miss them and I wish I had more time to develop them because there could have been something special?
Not recently. I think that, you know, when I look back to Carl Frampton, I felt like we could have gone on an unbelievable journey with Carl.
All right.
Like when we had him against Kiko Martinez for the European title, it was like the first night that he popped. You know, we had like 7,000 in the Odyssey. The atmosphere was incredible. And then, you know, Barry McGuigan wanted to get more involved in the promotion and we kind of got pushed out a little bit. And I felt like, you know, I still think he went on to have an amazing career. But yeah, I felt like we could have done some great things with Carl. And then the others, you know, no one's really left us. You know, sometimes a contract expires and it doesn't work for us and you've got to let someone go. But yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to ask, you mentioned you've teased a UK card, another card up your sleeve. Have you got any potential dates for us? Is that going to be early 25 or are we looking to run out 24?
The next one, which we could announce tomorrow, but it will be in the next few days, is November 30th. And
oh, nice.
It'll be a big card, a great headline, all British fight. Be up around your neck of the woods as well. So, you know, I think Birmingham is becoming a little bit of a hotspot for boxing now. You know, we've still got to work on trying to drive, I've said it to you before, the box office sales. Like the fighters are selling a lot of tickets and there feels like a very strong boxing community. But we're hoping that this card can just resonate with the casual fan in the city as well. So I think sooner or later we're going to, the last one was really good. The crowd, you know, like 5,000, 6,000. We really want to ram 7 or 8 in there and fill up the Resorts World. So hopefully this is the card to do it. Just quickly before I go, a couple of others. There was a question about UK. How does Eddie feel he can improve the DAZN UK shows? I think right now, like, because of the strength of the Riyadh season cards, obviously we've got to keep making the shows as strong as possible. But I think we've got to just try and identify great domestic fights that might not even be headline fights, but you can actually build brilliant cards around them and get people really excited by those fights. I think a good example of that is Ishmael Davis against Junaid Boston.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a headline fight, but that is actually a fight that over time can really become a great fight. And I think the reality is that Junaid and Ishmael, they need those kind of fights to go to the next level in terms of the purses, the profile, like everything. And, you know, the plan is for Junaid to fight on that November 30th card in Birmingham, and Ishmael Davis to fight in Manchester in October, and then put them in together. Yeah. You know, that we need these guys to be on board with those kind of fights. And I think we also have to look at these UK shows and look at how we can freshen them up. And that can come from anything between ring walks, from the broadcast, from the number of fights on a show, you know, from the time that the main event gets into the ring. You know, is there something on judging or scoring or, you know, something interactive? I don't know. I think it's not just about, you know, the fights are important. That's the main product. Yeah. It's just keeping it fresh. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at Matchroom right now about how we're going to move into 2025. But, you know, I think that what you have to understand is people saying, oh, you know, these UK shows, they're taking their foot off the gas, this. I read it all. And you know that I like to, you know, I don't want to see negativity. I want you guys to say, we love what they're doing. And we're working really hard to make sure that we have a strong end to the year and that we take British boxing forward in 2025. But I do think it is a great time for the sport right now on many different levels, and we've got to make the most of it.
But I think one of the things that you did do, and you introduced that with the Madrimov fight with Terence Crawford, you introduced darts. You've got snooker, darts. I would really love to see some of your boxers do that. You know, when you talk about like the behind the scenes, the media stuff, and get them involved in the opposite sports, I think that would be brilliant for them.
Yeah, there's lots that we can do. There's lots that we can do. And fighters have got to get involved as well, and they've got to be part of it, you know. But also at the same time, there's a lot of huge purses in the world right now for a very small number of fighters. But, you know, people do hear about he's getting that, and it becomes difficult to make fights because all of a sudden a fighter wants 5 times what the value of that fight might be. And that can be frustrating, but, you know, that's our job to deliver.
Well, listen, it's been short and sweet, but always a pleasure. Eddie, I appreciate you so much for doing this. All the best for Friday night, all the best for Saturday night. And I'm going to, like you said, jump to the front of the queue, and I'm going to get hold of you next week as well. So I look forward to that.
Thanks for everyone for tuning in. I enjoyed this. I'll do it more often.
Yeah, we've got to do it again. Guys, chat, you've been amazing. And you know what we say, October Red. You know what we say, guys. Stay ready.
People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.